Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand to receive the Deputy Mayor of Darlington, Councillor Jan Taylor.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad I'm not saying good evening, by the way. We thought the debate. Please, everybody, be seated. Right, further to the evidence that we've heard, there's item 3 on our council agenda, and this is a notice of motion. And there's one motion with notice for consideration this afternoon, and I call on Councillor Andy Scott to move the motion, if you would like to. No, in fact, you mean if I turn a bit too fine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, can I thank all of the speakers who have taken the time to come here today for providing their professional insight and views and providing such passionate contributions and sharing their own personal experience. It's been an incredibly powerful message. And I'd also like to thank Ali Wilson and her team for taking the time to engage, to explain and to listen. We don't underestimate the scale of the job that you are charged with doing. Now, I had a big long speech, and it doesn't feel right to just go over the comments that have already been made. I do not want to detract from the message that's already been put out there, but I do want to make a few comments. Firstly, clearly travel and distance is a major issue, and I say to you, really you need to bottom that out, and when the time is right, to have an answer for those issues that people have. I can understand the rationale for having one centralised specialist service and for the residents of this borough to access that one service. But that rationale for me starts to disintegrate when we move outside of the borough and we hear about, from all those people we've heard from today, from Barnard Castle, from Richmond, from Catterick, from the Dales. That rationale then starts to disintegrate, and my message to you is that you really need to address that. Transport infrastructure is a major issue. The unpredictability of childbirth, and I reflect on Ian Holmes' message, and I reflect on my own circumstance. My first child was born, there was a perfectly normal pregnancy, there were no issues whatsoever. In childbirth, there ended up being 3 consultants in the room, and rather very testing time for us. I can't imagine not having consultants on site at that time. What would have happened? Personally, we need to understand what it means by centralising maternity. We heard about the issue of Catterick, and how Catterick doesn't seem to be factored into the plans. Catterick is going to be the biggest army population in Europe. I didn't know that. I thought it was just the UK. But think about those people. There's a huge army population, and the risk to them of physical harm is far greater than the risk of physical harm to the general civilian population. And to think that they might have an extra 30-minute journey beyond Darlington to get to the service, to get to the care that they might need. We heard about family visits and the difficulty in people getting to the particular hospitals, and the difficulty with transport. And there's a general lack of compassion if we don't address that, if we don't consider the impact on those families who have to make those long journeys. I'd like to make a point about adult social care, about prevention and about public health. And if you cast your mind back to the slides right at the beginning, and those were central planks which underpinned the STP. And without those, improved out-of-hospital services like adult social care, like prevention and public health, then it would be difficult to get to an end result. But those services have been squeezed. Not only have they been squeezed, I would say they've been strangled. The investment, there's huge investment there. And until we understand how that investment is going to start again, then I can't see how we can then progress on to the final outcome. I'd finally like to just mention something about paediatrics, and I don't think paediatrics has been particularly discussed. And I talk about paediatrics because I just feel that the impact on the poorest in our communities will be felt the worst. People who haven't got transport, who may have to travel long distance to a hospital with their child who is an inpatient and have to leave that child, is beyond comprehension for me. Did you know, if you want to go to Stockton, or if you want to go from Stockton to Darlington, the last bus is around 7 o'clock at night. A return ticket to either Stockton or Darlington is £12 something, I can't remember. Imagine a family trying to visit a child. The cost would be disproportionate. And that leads me to say, let's remind ourselves what the ethos of the NHS is. It's a service that is free for all at the point of access. But if the NHS start to make that access so remote as to incur considerable cost, then that ethos of free at the point of access starts to be eroded. Not only that, will the impact will be felt the heaviest by the poorest in our communities. And I think that's what we're fighting for here. And I'm really proud today that we've done this and we've heard these comments. So I'm going to move a motion. That motion, I have to say, is fairly bland, and there's already amendment, I know. And I'll ask members to consider seriously that amendment already from what they've heard today. So, as a matter of process, I'll read out the motion. So the motion is, the Council calls upon the Darlington Clinical Commissioning Group to ensure that any changes proposed by the draft NHS Sustainability and Transformation Plan do not disadvantage Darlington residents.
Thank you. Okay. I'm just asking then if Councillor Mrs Heather Scott to second the motion. I'm down to second. So if you'd like to...
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Deputy Chair, Mayor. Sorry. I would just like to take this opportunity to second this motion, and I think today's exercise has been an extremely useful exercise, and I think that was the reason that we actually put this motion to Council, to give the public and other people, clinicians and experts, an opportunity to engage with us as members. And whilst, as a member of the Scrutiny Committee, I mean, we do get the opportunity to question both the CCG and the STP, I think general council members don't really understand the whole concept behind it. So I think that this has been an extremely useful exercise. Some of the things that were raised by a member of the public, I think certainly evidence, particularly about the expansion of Catterick. And I thought that Dr. Slosh made a very impressive approach to that, and I think it's something that we do have to take into account because there was a very powerful message there. I think that obviously we've had quite a lot of questions put by the members of the public, but I have to say that most of these are questions that we've already had in scrutiny and we will continue to question, and I think that both the representatives from the CCG and from the STP know that we do question you, and we will continue to do so. We do have a responsibility as Scrutiny Committee to question the plan, and I would hope that because the draft plan is not due to be produced until June, I do hope that we will have an opportunity after today's meeting and getting the feedback from Ali in what she said in her final speech, that we may have an opportunity to amend some of the things that are in the STP. As Councillor Scott has said, there is an amendment that is due to be put, and I would also urge all the council members to support the amendment. But at this point in time, I'm very happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this point we go into discussion. Councillor Copeland, I know, would you like to come forward?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yes, I agree with everything that my two colleagues have said. I think it's been a most interesting day, and it's been great to hear directly from experts and members of the public. Excuse me. I wish to move an amendment to the motion that has already been put before us. I will read it out for the benefit of those people who are in the gallery. My amendment is to add the following to the motion moved by Councillor Scott and seconded by Councillor Heather Scott. In light of the evidence presented today, this council calls upon Darlington Clinical Commissioning Group to urgently revisit the current proposals and confirm: 1, that it will retain a full accident and emergency service at Darlington Memorial Hospital to ensure that the following risks are not realised. A, the health risks to patients of longer journey times to hospital for urgent treatment, and B, the risks and problems to relatives and carers, particularly those from low-income households, of longer and costly journeys to see patients, and C, the risks to already stretched social care services of underfunded proposals for out-of-hospital services, and 2, that it will retain a consultant-led maternity and paediatric service at Darlington Memorial Hospital. And thirdly, this council asks members of the Health and Partnership Scrutiny Committee to use their full powers to evaluate and challenge the details published in the SPT as it moves forward. The amended motion would then read: This council calls upon the Darlington Clinical Commissioning Group to ensure that any changes proposed by the draft NHS Sustainability and Transformation Plan do not disadvantage Darlington residents, and in light of evidence presented today, this council calls upon the Darlington Clinical Commissioning Group to urgently revisit its current proposals and confirm: 1, that it will retain a full accident and emergency service at Darlington Memorial Hospital to ensure that the following risks are not realised. A, the health risks to patients of longer journey times to hospital for urgent treatment, the risks and problems to relatives and carers, particularly those from low-income households, of longer and costly journeys to see patients, and the risks to already stretched social care services of unfunded proposals for out-of-hospital services, and that it will retain a consultant-led maternity paediatric service and paediatric service at Darlington Memorial Hospital. This council asks members of the Health and Partnership Scrutiny Committee to use their full powers to evaluate and challenge the details published in the SPT as it moves forward. And in moving this motion, I would just like to say some additional points. We have heard today the reasoning behind the STP, and we have also heard from many knowledgeable and experienced people and members of the public, service users like myself, raising their concerns about a variety of issues. There are still many unanswered questions which are raising the anxiety of the residents of Darlington and beyond. Looking further than the concerns about the future of the A&E department and the maternity and paediatric services, elderly residents are concerned about how and where they will be cared for when they become frail and unwell. Will there be a hospital bed close to home if they need it? And will there be adequate care in the community to support them at home? The move to 7-day working has big implications on local authorities and needs to be understood better, including how this is to be resourced. The STP aims to strengthen links between health and social care commissioning. However, we have not heard how the financial pressures on social care are to be addressed. These are big changes contained in the STP, and I think dialogue with the local authority should have begun much earlier. You wanted the views of the residents of Darlington and beyond, and you have now been given them, and it is up to you to act upon them and address their concerns. Start by entering into meaningful consultation instead of letting rumours and conjecture take over. Provide the evidence and statistics which are behind your proposals, and let us give them due consideration. Madam Deputy Mayor, there is a copy of the motion.
Whoops. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Tostevin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And thank you once again to everybody who's presented today. And based on the evidence presented here, and in particular, the need for more data, I believe, is critical, greater public engagement, and a much greater focus on community services as part of this transformation plan. I would formally like to second this motion. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Right, at this point I'm inviting members to take part in the debate. Yes, Councillor Hazeldine. I think that's been the process. Yes, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't think I'm speaking to anybody in here that doesn't support the amendment and that. But what I would like to say, because I'd like our friends from the NHS to hear, is that the proposals that you have on the table, or you're thinking of putting on the table, endanger every life in this borough and the surrounding area, to the south of the Tees and to the north of the Tees and up into the valleys. We all have family. Every resident in this borough will be affected by a closure of the Darlington Memorial Hospital. Aunties, uncles, brothers, sisters, whatever you want, you will be putting lives at risk. Young people, old people, and the rest that go with it. We are a growing town now. Our economic growth is better than most in the country. We've got chances to move on and develop. And the decisions you are making puts not just our economic growth at risk, but our residents at risk. There isn't a child or adult or member who lives in my ward, in the Lingfield and Redhall ward, that wouldn't be affected for it. The other thing is that Redhall is the designated area for our Healthier Homes project. And there's excitement about that because it gives clinical and health services at point of entry or whatever rather than the hospital. But that won't take away the need for an A&E. For the child that falls and breaks a leg, for the adult who trips on a curb, for the car accident, for the push bikes, for things that are unpredicted and unforeseen. We need that facility within our borough to serve the people, not just of the borough, but of the wider community. You need to take that into account. You cannot mess with people's lives. And this government putting the pound before people is disgraceful. I support the amendment.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Deputy Mayoress. I think one of the things that came out of the talks that I heard, unfortunately I had to go home, was that it's not just Darlington, it's the surrounding area, the impact on the communities around us as well, that rely on Darlington to be the hub. One of the things that highlights to me is the transport situation for people getting to and from hospitals. If they get moved, the specialist centre gets moved to any other of the hospitals. One of the talks I've had with people in Hartlepool is that the service that was offered to them when their hospital was closed, they were offered a hospital-funded, an NHS-funded bus service. It's poor. We don't want a poor service of transport. If we're going to get any transport to any hospital that is funded by the NHS, it must be of good or better, not the poor service that's currently being offered for the people of Hartlepool.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Looking round. If there's no more contributions from members, because I know everybody's listened well to a very full debate and don't want to repeat, I'll call on Councillor Andy Scott. You, as the mover of the original motion, you can reply to the debate if you so wish. Yeah.
Thank you. All I have to say really is that I'm in support of the amendment. The amendment extends the original motion to something that we can work with. I'm pleased with that. Scrutiny will be used to its fullest potential in terms of scrutinising the STP as it goes forward. So I can only recommend that you vote for the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Right now, I'm going to call on members to vote on the amendment, please. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. And those against? The amendment is carried. Now, the amendment now becomes a substantive motion. So, are there any further contributions from members on the new substantive motion that's on the table? No, looking round. Right. Well, I can ask now, Councillor Copeland, if you would like to close the debate, reply to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yes, I would like to thank my colleagues very much for their support to the motion. I hope it captures most of what has been discussed today. I think it's been an excellent way of looking at and investigating this area, and I hope that we've shed some light on those dark corners that we didn't see any light in before. And I think I hope our colleagues from the health get the message that we want to have more discussion and dialogue, and we do want to see the evidence that underpins what you're proposing to do. And I think, as I say, that will help us to come to decisions, and certainly help scrutiny to look at issues in more detail. So I think it's been an excellent day, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming and attending. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Copeland. Right, we need to now vote on what is now the substantive, the whole motion. So all those in favour, please show. Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much. That ends the business of this meeting today. Thank you.